Welcome to another episode of Resilience Rising with Naturally Cinnamon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Yeah, I have a little bit of voice. I kind of don't tell y'all that. That's low key for y'all, but don't ask me to sing because I'm not going to. Anyway, whatever time of whatever day it is that you are watching, listening, tuning into this podcast, I thank you for tuning in. And I would like for you to like it, love it, share it, rate it, comment, but definitely subscribe and follow the podcast. Share it with a friend, share it with a family member, trying to get my numbers up. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I am Naturally Cinnamon for those who are tuning in for the first time. I'm a therapist, life coach, the resilience cultivator, and I am the founder and CEO of Jamila Wellness, where women go to be well and live beautifully. You can find Jamila Wellness online at jamilawellness.org. You can also find all things me at naturallycinnamon.com. Today's topic. And for those of you who may see me look down from time to time, if you're watching by video, either on YouTube or on Facebook, you see me looking down from time to time, it's because I have notes. Like, I come prepared to these podcast sessions, and I just really want you to know that I love you so much that I plan ahead of time what we're going to talk about almost every episode. So today, I want to talk to you about storms. For those of you who have been tuning in, know that I am a therapist and a life coach, but I also have been diagnosed with clinical depression, and I have my walk with clinical depression that I, go through, and I have lessons that I learned myself that I can then in turn teach to others, including my clients. But I'm going to share one with you. But first, as I love to do, I want to tell you a story. So at my old apartment that I used to live in, there was a balcony, and it was a really nice sized balcony. It was really cool. And I remember when I moved in, there was, and it was a screened in balcony, just so you know. When I moved in, there was like some like a little dirt like area, but it came from the rain that, when it would rain. I live in South Florida. So when it rains, which it does often, it would leave like, a little residue that would come with the rain if it came off the roof, or if it was just, just dirt or sludge or whatever it was, depending on which direction the wind would blow the rain in, through the screen, et cetera, et cetera. So that was there when I moved in, and I was like, it's no big deal. I'll get around to cleaning it up. Right now, I just want to move into the inside and get everything situated on the inside. Well, here's what happened. I didn't really pay attention to the outside, and it wasn't really that bad. It was just like a little film, and I was like, I can get that up. I did some spring cleaning later meaning an entire year later. I'm not ashamed to admit this. I didn't go back out on that balcony for like a whole year, and I was just like, I really need to clean this up. I'm doing some cleaning. So I went out, and I was like, okay, well, the water got this grime down here, which of course a year later, it was much worse than it was when I first moved in. And I was like, okay, I got this grime down here. I'm just going to go ahead and I should be able to mop it up. So the mop, I poured some water down, like just regular mop water that I would have used inside the house, like, Pine Sol or whatever, and some water. And I threw it down and I let it sit there for a while and soak. And I went to go mop it up. It didn't move. Like it didn't budge. It didn't even make a dent. It did nothing. And I was like, well, that didn't work. Let's go for something a little heavier. Bleach. Bleach works. I'm going to go to bleach. So I went, and I did not dilute the bleach and mix it with water or anything. I just got the bottle of bleach and poured it right there. And I just was like, okay, I'm going to let this sit. That sat for a little while, and I was like, all right, the bleach worked. I know the bleach worked. Bleach works on everything. So I went, got my mop back, and went to mopping. Nothing. And I mean absolutely nothing. It didn't move. It didn't budge. Nothing happened. So I went inside the house, and I got my broom, and I was like, ugh. So I got the broom and started like scraping, using the bristles of the broom to scrape against the sludge that was on the patio. And that's when it began to break up. After soaking in more bleach and using the broom to like scrape it up is when it started to come up. That happened. Needless to say, I never let it go that far again before I went outside to clean up after it rained. But I got a whole lesson And as I live with the depression that I've been diagnosed with, and a lot of people may say, oh, I don't claim depression. You don't have to claim whatever you don't want to claim. I know this is what I deal with. So if I ignore it, it gets worse. I've tried that. I've tried ignoring it and speaking it out of existence and all that other stuff, and it just got worse. So I'm going to own that this is something that I walk around with, because when I am able to do that, I am able to combat whatever comes up that tries to go with it. Like when I have the depression waves that come up, when I ignore them, the waves get bigger. When I deal with it, the waves get smaller and they come less frequently. So that's just me. That's what I do. I live with depression, #living with depression, and I deal with them. So here's something I learned about those depressive waves and those storms that come up when I'm dealing with depression or depressive symptoms. Here's something I learned from that simple time of trying to clean off my patio, my balcony. First thing I learned, one thing I know I did is I ignored it for way too long. So that's a problem. If you've got something going on in your life, some sort of storm, don't ignore it. That's not going to help. I ignored it way too long, and I had so much to remove and to clean up that I neglected to prepare for that. I didn't prepare accurately for what it was going to take to actually clean up that mess. I didn't even assess the mess. I just went out and was like, okay, I'll just throw some Pine Sol on it and mop it up. I didn't assess how bad the mess was, and I didn't prepare to actually tackle it. I just kind of went out and went in it with my eyes closed. And as you can see, that didn't work. Also, I didn't pay any attention to what the rain was doing while the storm was coming, while the storm was happening. I kind of just ignored it. I closed my blinds to it. I closed the door to it. I didn't pay attention to what it was doing on or to the balcony, the patio balcony. I just knew the storm was happening, and I closed my eyes to it, and I was just like, I'll deal with it later. I'll go, I ignored it. That did not work in my favor either. And then after the storm was gone, I didn't just go ahead and go outside and clean it up. I just let it be. I just let it sit. I let it marinate, so to speak. Also, not something that worked well in my favor. So moving forward, how do we make sure that we're not doing that when the storms of our lives are coming and we know they're coming? When the storms in our lives are happening at that time, are we not paying attention to what the rain is doing? Are we not focusing on what's going on? Are we not even preparing for those storms? Like I said, I live in South Florida. We get hurricanes all the time. So there are a lot of people who already have shutters, but there are people who don't. So the people who have shutters have prepared for a storm, for an impending storm. So when it's time to put those shutters up, we could do that. But those who don't have shutters have to now improvise or try to get out to the hardware store and figure something out. So how prepared are we? Also, when that storm was happening outside on my back patio and I didn't clean up afterwards, those things that I didn't do didn't serve me well. So I had to look at, okay, what are some things I need to do moving forward? So in the storms that are coming in your life or that may come, let me help you with 3 things not to do as it pertains to your storms, okay? Number 1, do not ignore your storms or the signs of an impending storm. Don't ignore them. Don't be like, well, if I don't pay attention to it, or if I don't claim it, or if I don't address it, it just won't happen. Don't ignore the signs. If the winds start blowing a little too rough, if things start happening in our lives, if people start falling away from us, if certain types of people start coming to us that weren't there before, if certain things start happening, if you look at your bank account and you're starting to see that you're spending way too much money on certain things and you may not have money to pay your light bill or pay your rent or pay your mortgage or pay a bill that you actually need, that's a sign of an impending storm. Something may be coming down the pike and you need to know what that is. You need to either know what that is or know that something is coming. Don't ignore the signs. Now, preparing for your storms doesn't mean that the storm won't come. There are a lot of people that think that they can avoid it by preparing for it. That doesn't necessarily mean that the storm won't come. It might not, but it might. And in the event that it does, you are better prepared than you were before when you were pretending that that storm wasn't coming. So point number one is, do not pretend that the storm isn't coming, or do not ignore the signs of a possible impending storm. That's one surefire way that your storm can take you out. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two, do not pretend that the storm isn't actually happening. Sometimes you may not know the signs of a storm, and sometimes you may miss the signs of a storm. But when the storm is actually happening, you can't miss that. You know it's happening. It's happening right now. You're in the midst of a storm. You're in the midst of grief. You're in the midst of loss. You're in the midst of abandonment. You're in the midst of maybe some sort of abusive situation or potentially abusive situation. When you're in the midst of that storm, don't ignore it. Don't pretend that it's not there. Don't pretend that it's not happening. We have become a really good society of speaking positive, and that is a wonderful thing. But be careful that you're not speaking positively so much that you're ignoring the reality. When the reality is there and it's happening, don't ignore it. Do what you must do to deal with it. Not knowing how to handle it, not knowing how to handle the storm is okay. Or, not knowing what to do, it's fine. It's normal. You're not expected to be an expert in all things. No one is expected to be an expert in all things. So not knowing how to handle it or what to do when a storm is present in your life, it's fine. It's okay. Take the pressure off yourself. If you're in the midst of a storm and you don't know what to do, don't find yourself wallowing in, this is going to take me out. It's okay that you don't know what to do, but not trying to do anything, avoiding it completely, just not handling it, ignoring it, pretending it'll go away if you just close your eyes to it. That's what's not okay. It's okay not to know what to do. It's not okay to pretend that it's not even there, because it's happening. And you know it's happening. So making the choice to pretend that it's not happening, it's not helpful to you. But making the choice to ask someone for help, what should I do? What do I do? Like I said, I live in South Florida. We have people who move here from northern states. We have people who move here from just other parts of the country that have not yet experienced hurricanes personally. They have no problem with saying, hey, I'm not from here. I don't know what to do. What do you guys do when a storm is coming? What do you guys do when a hurricane is coming your way? Ask for help. Ask somebody. Find yourself a life coach. Find yourself a therapist. Google something. Read a book. Listen to a podcast. I don't know, but for God's sakes, do something. Do something. Try to fight your way through the storm that's already happening in your life. Okay, so that's point number two, is don't try to ignore it. Don't try to pretend it's not there. Don't try to pretend it's not happening. That's point number two. Point number three is, once the storm has passed, now it's over. Now the storm is over. You have to clean it up. You have to clean up. You have to clean up. You have to clean up behind your storm. It is your responsibility. You have to clean up. A few months ago in Miami, and it also touched in some other parts of the southeastern part of the country, and also in Puerto Rico and the Bahamas, I believe, Hurricane Irma hit in around September 2017. Hurricane Irma came and went, but the damage that it left in my yard, I couldn't sit there and expect someone else to just walk over into my yard and clean up the mess that was left in my yard by that storm. That's my responsibility, because that's my yard. I need to get out there and clean it up. And then I can't get upset when someone else doesn't do it. It's not their responsibility. It is my responsibility. If I want it to be clean, then I need to get up and I need to go out there and I need to clean it up. And I need to figure out what tools I need to clean it up. If I don't have the tools, I need to find the tools to go ahead and get that thing cleaned up. Don't be afraid to work at it. Iyanla says it all the time. Do your work. A lot of people say it all the time. Do your work. Do the work. You got to do the work. But do we actually do the work? Are we actually doing the work? Are we? Are you doing the work? And that's not for you to answer. You don't have to, but ask yourself, am I really, really doing the work to try to clean some of this stuff up? Cleaning up behind a storm is not fun. It's not fun. I'll be the first to admit it is not enjoyable. And I like cleaning my house. I like organizing my things, but cleaning up behind a storm, it's not fun. You have the sludge that I had on my patio. You have the sludge and you got to now dig in there and you got to get it up, and it's not enjoyable. It's not a fun task. You can make it fun. You can invite friends over and say, okay, today we're going to do my house. Get some music playing, barbecue if you want. You can make it fun. But the actual task itself is not always fun. And you have to find the tools necessary to get up what you need to get up. I drove around after Hurricane Irma as much as I could because there was a lot of road debris and it was dangerous, but I drove around as much as I could, and I could see people out using all kinds of different tools based on what the storm left behind for them. So what the storm left behind for you may not be the same thing that a storm may leave behind for your friend or your relative or your coworker. Everybody, based on their own storms, has a different set of tools to clean up the different damage or residue that a storm may leave behind. But not cleaning it up is a mistake. It is a mistake. Please, please, please don't do that. Please, please, please don't make that mistake. After your storm has passed, please clean up what needs to be cleaned up. And it's your responsibility to do so. If you're the one that wants clarity in your life, then you need to get up and clean it up and get whatever necessary tools you need. The necessary tool, like I said earlier, could be a therapist. The necessary tool could be a spiritual advisor. The necessary tool could be a night out with the girls. The necessary tool could be a night out with the guys. The necessary tool could be, there are times when I get on a plane and I fly out to where a relative is, or my mom, I find my mom and I will just lay in her lap and cry. If that's the tool that I need for right now to get me to the next step, then that's the tool I'm going to get. Find the necessary tools. So I'll go back through these points again. 3 things not to do as it pertains to your storm. Point number 1, do not ignore the storm or the signs of impending storms. Point number 2, do not pretend the storm isn't there and it's not happening. Don't ignore it. And point number 3, once the storm is gone, get out there and clean it up. Clean up as much as you can and get the necessary tools you need to go ahead and do that. Let me tell you what happened. Remember in my story of cleaning up after that storm that I ignored and I let it just sit there, I had to go back in my house and get my broom that I did use inside the house and scrape up all that sludge. That was the tool that I needed to use because of I wouldn't have needed to use that tool if I had gone ahead and cleaned up after each storm, but I didn't. I let it compound. So I had to go and get a tool. And guess what happened? I sacrificed that tool. That tool never came back inside my house because it was just gross after that. The tool, I was scraping so much. I remember the broom bent or it broke or something. It was done. I had to just get rid of that broom. It was gone. But what happens is you run the risk of sacrificing something you may not have wanted to sacrifice, or something you were not prepared to lose or let go of at that time in order to try to clean up behind something you ignored. You may find yourself sacrificing something you didn't want to sacrifice or weren't ready to sacrifice just to try to clean up something that you ignored and didn't try to take the time to prepare for. These are things that can happen in real life. And I'm using this story to illustrate that these are things that happen in real life. I had several times going through, before actually being diagnosed with depression, that I had several storms come up and I found ways to circumvent them or ignore them or pretend they weren't happening. And then I didn't want to clean up afterwards, because then if I pretend it's not there, how can I clean up behind something that wasn't there? So I've got to uphold this facade that there was never a storm, when really these storms were knocking my behind all over the place. And I was not preparing for them. I was not acknowledging that they were happening, and I didn't clean up the mess that it left when it was gone, and ended up sacrificing pieces of myself trying to clean it up later. I've sacrificed friendships, I've sacrificed relationships, I've sacrificed time, I've sacrificed money, I've sacrificed a lot just to be able to become, and I don't regret any of it because it helped me be able to become who I am today, and to be able to sit in a seat where I can help others. But what are some things that I sacrificed that I probably didn't have to sacrifice if I had just paid attention to the storm and cleaned up when it was over? Something to think about. You may find yourself sacrificing something you never wanted to lose. So to prevent that from happening, don't ignore the storms. Prepare for the storms as best you can. Don't ignore the storms once they're coming, once they're actually happening, and clean up behind it. So I know this wasn't the most pick-me-up episode of this podcast, but I really felt that I needed to say that to somebody as we prepare for anything that's happening. So even if this episode wasn't necessarily for you, this episode is for somebody. And if you know or can think of anyone that may need to hear this, please, please, please share it with them. Share it with that friend. Share it with that family member. Share it with that coworker. Share it with that associate. Just share it. Email this out. Put it on social media. Get it out there to help people as they go through their different storms. And the storms could be physical. The storms could be mental. The storms could be financial. The storms could be spiritual. The storms could be emotional. They could be any type of different storm, but we have to acknowledge that the storm is there, and we need to know what to do once that storm is gone. Get those necessary tools in place so we could try to prevent sacrificing something you didn't want to lose in the first place. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like it, love it, share it, rate it, comment. You can send your comments right on this platform, or you can send them into cinnamon@jamilawellness.org. You can also text me any questions, topic suggestions, or comments to this podcast episode at 786-475-2466. I am Naturally Cinnamon, and I bid thee good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Thanks for tuning in to Resilience Rising with Naturally Cinnamon. Life has a way of tossing unexpected trials and circumstances our way. We can't stop them, but we can better handle them by raising our resilience. Creative Director Jeremy Key for J Key Collective. Music by AJ Miles.